Good. Okay, so this is our legal issue presentation for EDLP 705. I'm Andrew Barwick.
I'm Jordan Hughes.
I'm Ashlyn Kelley.
And I'm David KanKam.
Okay, so we're going to start with the background of our case. So the background is about a student named Jake. He is a third grade student at Westview Elementary School. He has an IEP due to his diagnosed learning disability in reading and written expression. So he's had this IEP for a couple of years because he struggles with reading and writing. Jake gets frustrated when he cannot comprehend what he's reading, as well as when he is required to complete lengthy written assignments. So some of his IEP accommodations include frequent breaks during instructional activities and assessments. So that can either be teacher discretion or if he asks for breaks. Directions broken into single steps so that he doesn't get as easily frustrated. Preferential seating near instruction, and then also reduced writing and abbreviated writing tasks. So the scenario is this. In preparation for the upcoming state assessments, Jake's teacher, Mrs. Jones, assigns the class to complete a text-dependent writing, or TDW prompt. So the assignment includes reading a passage, then the prompt, and following all the steps of the writing process in order to complete the assignment. Mrs. Jones has done several writing assignments throughout the year with the class. She's done it with them. She's modeled it for them with lots of support. So she tells the class that this time they're going to complete it independently in order to prepare them for the state test. Well, Jake becomes visibly frustrated during the assignment, of course, because she isn't providing him any support. He raises his hand and asks to use the restroom. Mrs. Jones tells him that he just went before class and that he needs to complete this assignment. Jake becomes more upset and he starts slamming his fists on the table, after which Mrs. Jones tells him to stop. He refuses to stop. He gets more and more frustrated to the point where she gets irritated with him and she gives him silent lunch for disrespect. So that afternoon, Jake goes home and he tells his mom what happened at school. His mom is angry and she calls the school and asks to speak with his teacher, Mrs. Jones. She defends her actions and she tells the mom that he has to learn to complete these kind of tasks independently because he's going to have to take the state assessments just like all of the other students are, and that she can't offer him those kinds of supports like she has been the whole year because he needs to be able to do it on his own. So the mom bypasses her and goes to the principal, and she tells the principal that she's going to file a lawsuit because Miss Jones is not implementing the accommodations on his IEP. Specifically, when he asked, to go to the restroom, have a break, and she denied him that, and also just giving him the assignment as is and not breaking it down into any smaller steps for him.
Okay, so there's a couple legal issues with the scenario. The biggest issue, the major issue that we see is failure to implement an IEP or Jake's IEP. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, schools are legally required to follow a student's IEP as written. And basically, Jake's IEP clearly includes frequent breaks. It includes directions and single steps as well as reduced writing tasks. And in this particular scenario, none of those things happen. So already you're kind of out of compliance, or you're going against the grain of his IEP. Instead, his teacher, Ms. Jones, she required him to do the work with no support. She denied him a break, and she did not modify his assignment. And although she's trying to prepare the students for testing, his IEP would still be in place whether they're testing or not. And essentially, she failed to follow his IEP in general, which could turn into a major lawsuit, which is why that's the biggest one. You kind of see stuff like that quite often. The second legal issue would be denial of FAPE, which is free and public education. When accommodations are ignored, the student technically can't access the curriculum. Why? Because failure to implement the IEP is denial of FAPE. Basically, you can't if you deny some of their accommodations that are listed on their IEP, you're basically denying them their education because these are entitled to them due to their IEP. The teacher made statements like he has to learn to complete his writing tasks while at the same time preventing him from doing so by not adhering to his IEP. The third legal issue is disability and discrimination concerns. So Jake was disciplined for writing behavior, for behavior that was tied to his disability, which was frustration due to reading/writing difficulty, and he was, punished. And that, in a whole, could just be looked at as discriminatory. So basically, in these incidents, the schools have to determine whether the behavior the child is displaying is associated with their disability or not before disciplining the child. And in this case, things like denying breaks, which is associated with his IEP, could kind of trickle down and fall back, look negatively for the district, and look as if they're discriminating against a kid with an IEP. And then lastly, the district, they just may need to do simple things like retrain their staff in general on how to deal with students with disabilities to one, prevent things to prevent things like this from happening in the future and avoid additional liability cases going forward.
Okay, so for addressing the situation, there are several different steps that should be taken. The first is to review if the IEP was implemented properly. Was he receiving the accommodations he needed to be successful in this assignment? Once we had determined that, we need to document the incident. So not just a summary of what he was asked to do, but we need the student's point of view as well as the teacher's point of view to kind of compare and see if there was any overlap. And then the third thing would be to initiate an internal investigation. So the purpose of this would just be determining whether the school failed to provide FAPE under IDEA or see if there were any breakdowns in the way the accommodations were delivered. The next step would be to evaluate the disciplinary action and see, like, was silent lunch an appropriate response for the situation, and just see if this was related to the student's disability, because if it was, we know that he cannot be punished for that. Okay. And then the next one, we would obviously hold an IEP team meeting to discuss the IEP, maybe where there were some weaknesses and what we could improve. This is a good chance to add anything if we feel like anything needs to be added, to be more explicit about what Jake needs or the student needs to be successful. And this would include the parents, the teacher, any student, any school personnel that serve the student, and administration. The next step would be to meet privately with the teacher to ensure they understand where they went wrong before and how to avoid this moving forward. So just giving them a chance to ask questions or to bounce ideas off of them, offering any support as an administrator, just so that they understand we're all on the same team, but it cannot happen again. And then the last and most important step would just with the parents regularly for the good or the bad, to be sure they're in the loop and they understand that we are taking this situation just as serious as they are, and that we are all on the side of the student and making sure that they can be successful.
So this is all related and will tie into the case law with Andrew F. versus Douglas County School District. So I started with a quote from the case. The IEP is a centerpiece of the statute's education delivery system for disabled children. An IEP sets out measurable annual goals for a student's progress toward their academic achievement. Andrew F. versus Douglas County School District was a case in 2017 that involved a student diagnosed with autism. Andrew was a student of Douglas County School District from preschool through fourth grade. Andrew's parents noticed that his functional progress began to stall. From year to year, his IEP goals were made the same, signaling that he was not making progress over time. Prior to the start of his fifth grade year, Andrew's parents attended his annual IEP meeting only to receive the same information and goals as the previous years. Andrew's parents decided to withdraw him from the public school and enroll him into a private school designed to support students with autism. The new school created a behavior intervention plan that focused on Andrew's most challenging behavioral outbursts and developed strategies to help him improve. Andrew's behavior significantly improved, therefore improving his academics. Andrew's parents were able to seek reimbursement from the public school district, stating that their district denied their son a free appropriate public education under the IDEA. So that ties onto all of this, basically stating that if you are following a student's IEP, if you are making sure that you have measurable goals, then a student will be able to make progress, and it is based off the individual student. However, if you are not progress monitoring, you will not be able to determine if a student is able to achieve those goals.